Did you know that failing to disclose a pre-existing medical condition when applying for private medical insurance could legally be treated as fraud? Most people assume that medical privacy automatically protects them during the insurance application process. But what many don't realize is this. Insurance contracts are built on a strict legal principle called utmost good faith, and your silence can cost you everything. A condition you thought was minor, a diagnosis you forgot to mention, a condition you think is irrelevant because it happened years ago, or medication you assumed was irrelevant, could later become the reason your medical claim is rejected when you need help the most. In this video, we're going to explore one of the most important and misunderstood principles in medical insurance: the legal duty of disclosure. We will discuss what pre-existing conditions really mean, why insurers ask medical questions, what counts as a material fact, how modern insurers investigate claims, why privacy laws do not remove disclosure obligations, the consequences of non-disclosure, and how applicants can protect themselves legally and financially. Because in medical insurance, the biggest mistake is often made long before the first claim is ever submitted. In insurance, what you don't disclose today could become the most expensive mistake of your life tomorrow. The psychology behind non-disclosure in medical insurance. Here are some of the reasons why people ignore disclosure requirements and what it eventually leads to. A person going through the medical history section may think, I can manage these conditions, or nothing will go wrong, or it won't happen again, or if I disclose this, the insurer may reject me, or surely they will never find out. So they leave out the material facts: the hypertension, the diabetes, that asthma, or the previous surgery, or the depression treatment, or the chronic back pain, or the medication they take every day. And with these non-disclosure of material facts, the form is submitted, and the policy is approved, the insurance card arrives. Life moves on normally. Until one day, there is an emergency. A hospitalization, surgery, stroke, kidney failure, cancer treatment, or an ICU admission. And suddenly the insurer begins reviewing records. Hospital files are opened. Previous diagnoses are discovered. Prescription history appears, and doctors' reports reveal earlier treatment. Then comes the question that changes everything. Why was this condition not disclosed during application? That single question has destroyed many claims, canceled many policies, and left families financially exposed during medical crisis. Why medical insurance is built on information. Medical insurance is fundamentally a business of risk assessment. When an insurer agrees to provide cover, it is making a financial commitment. The insurer is essentially saying, if you become sick, we may pay for treatment, hospitalization, medication, surgery, specialist care, or emergency services. But before making that commitment, the insurer wants to understand the level of risk involved. That is why application forms ask detailed medical questions. The insurer wants to know whether the applicant already has chronic illnesses, whether they have recurring medical conditions, whether they are already receiving treatment, whether hospitalization is likely, and whether future healthcare costs may be high. This process is known as underwriting. Underwriting helps the insurer decide whether to accept the risk, what premium to charge, whether waiting periods should apply, whether exclusions are necessary, or whether the application should be declined altogether. Many people misunderstand this process. They think the insurer is trying to invade privacy. In reality, the insurer is trying to price risk accurately, and that risk depends heavily on medical history. What is a pre-existing condition? A pre-existing condition is any illness, injury, diagnosis, symptom, or medical issue that existed before the insurance cover began. This includes conditions that are currently active, are controlled by medication, existed previously, or were under investigation before policy inception. The definition is broader than many people realize. For example, many applicants believe, if I am okay now, then it no longer counts. But in insurance, the past still matters because it may influence future claims. Common pre-existing conditions include hypertension, diabetes mellitus, asthma, epilepsy, heart disease, stroke history, cancer, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, chronic kidney disease, liver disease, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, thyroid disorders, chronic migraines, depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, chronic back pain, obesity-related conditions, peptic ulcer disease, chronic sinusitis, coronary artery disease, heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Past surgeries, specialist consultations, recurring symptoms, and long-term medication use may also qualify as material medical history. A person taking daily medication for blood pressure may feel perfectly healthy, but medically and legally hypertension still exists. A diabetic patient whose sugar levels are controlled still has diabetes. A person whose asthma attacks stopped years ago may still have a history that matters to underwriting. This is why applicants should never decide on their own that a condition is too small to disclose. The legal duty of disclosure. Insurance contracts operate under a legal principle called utmost good faith. This legal doctrine requires both parties to act honestly and transparently. Applicants are expected to provide complete information, avoid misleading statements, disclose known medical conditions, give correct and accurate information before policy issuance. This principle requires honesty and transparency from both parties. The insurer must explain the cover honestly, and the applicant must disclose material facts honestly. A material fact is any information that could influence the insurer's decision regarding acceptance, pricing, exclusions, waiting periods, or policy conditions. The key question is not, do I personally think this is serious? The real question is, would this information matter to a reasonable insurer? If the answer is yes, it must be disclosed. This legal obligation is extremely important because insurers often rely heavily on the applicant's own statements during underwriting. At the application stage, the insurer does not yet know everything about the applicant's medical history. That is why honesty matters so much. The most dangerous assumption. One of the most dangerous assumptions people make is this: the insurer will never find out. That belief has caused enormous financial loss for many policyholders. Modern medical insurance investigations are sophisticated. When major claims occur, insurers may review hospital records, pharmacy history, laboratory reports, doctor notes, specialist referrals, prescription databases, previous admissions, and prior insurance claims. A person may hide hypertension during application, but years later, during a stroke claim investigation, medical records reveal earlier diagnosis, prescription history, and long-term treatment. At that point, the insurer may argue that the applicant failed to disclose a material fact. The issue then shifts from medical treatment to contractual integrity, and this is where claims disputes begin. Why people hide medical conditions. Many people who fail to disclose are not necessarily criminals. Often they're afraid. They fear rejection, high premiums, exclusions, embarrassment, or losing access to coverage. Some people genuinely misunderstand the questions. Others assume old conditions no longer matter. And some intentionally conceal information, hoping it will never surface. But unfortunately, silence creates risk. The short-term comfort of hiding information can become long-term financial pain later, especially during serious illness. Consequences of non-disclosure. The consequences of non-disclosure can be severe. The first consequence is claim rejection. If the insurer determines that the condition existed before policy inception, the information was material, and it was not disclosed, the claim may be declined. The second consequence is policy cancellation. Some insurers may void the policy entirely, meaning legally, the insurer may treat the contract as though it should never have existed. The third consequence is fraud investigation. If the non-disclosure appears deliberate, the insurer may classify the matter as fraudulent misrepresentation. This can damage future insurability. The fourth consequence is emotional and financial stress. Imagine facing surgery, ICU admission, cancer treatment, dialysis, or chronic medication costs, while simultaneously arguing with an insurer over undisclosed medical history. That is a crisis nobody wants to face. Privacy laws and the myth of secrecy. Another common misunderstanding involves privacy laws. Some applicants assume medical privacy means they can keep important conditions secret. That is incorrect. Privacy laws regulate how information is stored, who can access it, how it is shared, and how it is protected. But they do not eliminate the applicant's duty to disclose material facts during a contractual application. Privacy protects information from misuse. It does not protect dishonesty. An insurer still has the legal right to ask relevant medical questions necessary for underwriting. The role of technology in modern claims investigation. By 2026, insurers are increasingly using AI-driven fraud analytics, predictive risk systems, digital claims audits, anomaly detection, and automated cross-referencing tools. Patterns can now reveal inconsistencies much faster than before. For example, if an applicant denies diabetes, but medical records show years of diabetic medication purchases, the system may flag the claim for deeper review. Technology has made concealment harder. And as digital healthcare systems become more connected, undisclosed conditions become easier to trace. The value of honest disclosure. Ironically, disclosure often protects the applicant more than non-disclosure. An insurer may still provide cover for a chronic condition. The insurer may apply waiting periods, increase premiums moderately, exclude certain treatments, or offer restricted benefits. But an honestly underwritten policy is usually far more secure during claims. Because once the insurer accepts the risk knowingly, there's less room for future disputes. The policyholder gains certainty, and certainty matters most during medical crisis. Practical advice for applicants. Anyone applying for medical insurance should take several precautions. First, read every question carefully. Do not rush through forms. Second, disclose chronic conditions clearly and accurately. Third, keep copies of all submitted documents. Fourth, review completed forms before signing, especially if an intermediary assisted with the application. Fifth, provide supporting medical reports where appropriate. And finally, if uncertain whether something matters, disclose it. In insurance, excessive honesty is usually safer than selective silence. Medical insurance is not tested when the policy card is printed. It is tested when illness arrives. That is when the strength of disclosure becomes clear. A policy built on honesty stands a much better chance of protecting the family during crisis. A policy built on hidden information may collapse at the exact moment help is needed most. So when applying for medical insurance, do not skip questions, soften diagnoses, hide medication, or assume that old conditions are irrelevant. Because what seems like a harmless omission today may become the reason a future claim is denied. If this video helped you understand the legal duty of disclosure in medical insurance, share it with someone applying for health cover right now. Many people lose claims not because they lacked insurance, but because of mistakes made during application. Subscribe to Insurance World TV for more practical insurance education, financial protection insights, and real-world risk awareness content. And remember, the best medical insurance policy is not the cheapest policy. It is the policy that still protects you when the hospital bill arrives. See you in the next video.